Alright, let's pull it out. Beautiful day. It's a little bit windy. Remove the chocks. Alright. Make sure wings are clear. Tail's clear. And we'll just pull it out. And we're just gonna go do a couple patterns today. I'd like to do an hour or so, but I don't have time to do an hour, so. All right. It's a little bit windy. It was 230 at 19 earlier, but it's calmed down now. Alright, that flaps up. Open the door because it's blooming hot in here. Now we're ready to go. So we'll go here. We'll start our flow here. Make sure fuel's on. Then we'll make sure all of our radios are off and the beacon is on. And we'll go to our checklist. Seats and seat belts adjust and locked. Brakes test and set. Master is on. Fuel valve handle is on. Carburetor heat's cold. Where is my start checklist? There we go. Alright. Then we'll go mixture rich, throttle cracked, mags on both. And we'll add a little bit of one shot of primer. About that much. And then we will go ahead and alright. Everything's good. Clear!
Alright. Bring it up to about 1,000. Make sure we have oil pressure. No temp won't move yet, both fuel gauges are good. We got suction. And we'll bring the radio stack up. And then we will switch over to here.
The altitude 2,500. Greenwood County Airport. Automated weather observation 2107 Zulu. Wind 250 at 11. Peak gusts 17. Visibility 10.
Alright, so we still have peak gust 17 out of 25, so that's too bad. Not too bad, so we do 7. And we will set our altimeter.
Altimeter 2985. Remarks. Density altitude 2,500.
There, and we'll double check field elevation. That's right. And now we'll taxi out. We're clear of the building. Got our power below about 13 or 1400 RPM. This is the buildings we'll all taxiing. I'm going to stop here and make sure that my Sentry is connected. Alright. We'll double check our Sentry connection. Alright, we'll call taxi. Make sure our transponder's on. Alright. Greenwood traffic, 72001, taxi runway 27, is Delta.
Greenwood traffic, 106 Alpha is going to be departing 27, left close traffic, Greenwood.
Alright, we got one other airplane in the pattern. And we got brand new painted lines. And we'll double check. All of our instruments are working. Alright, good. we'll use our feet to stay on the center line right here. And I have a little bit of cross-glide correction in. We do have a decent amount of crosswind, so I'm going to try to put a little bit in there, and then we're going to turn into the wind to not get blown over when we do our run up. Alright, right here. Now I'll shut this so there's less wind noise. We'll bring the power up. Bring the power up to we'll bring the power to 17. And then we'll do a mag check. So 2 clicks. We'll get a little bit of a fall, about 25 RPM. Back to both. It'd go back up to 1700 RPM. Back to, that would be the right mag. And back to both.
Traffic 106 Alpha, crosswind and downwind, runway 27, Greenwood.
That looks good, so we'll pull our curb heat. Drop of about 100 RPM. That's about right. Alright, and then we'll check suction, oil pressure. The oil temp is off the peg, but that should be normal because it is summertime and it's 85 degrees out. Alright, and we'll check our idle point. Alright, that's a really good idle. Now we will get my checklist go. On. Alright. Now we'll do our before takeoff checklist, which we did. We checked throttle setting, we checked our mags, we checked our carb heat, checked our suction gauge, set our trim for takeoff.
Greenwood, traffic 106 Alpha,
and
27 Greenwood.
Cabin doors are locked. Altimeter, altitude mode, we got our CTAF in here, we got our weather in there, pressure altitude's close. Alright, and then wing flaps are up.
Greenwood, traffic 106 Alpha, turning final,
Visually
27
confirmed.
full stop, Greenwood.
Carburetor heat's closed. And we will rotate at 50 and climb at 72 until all obstacles are clear per normal takeoff procedure. And before we do that, we are going to spin around here on the taxiway, which we know we have a T6 on final. Right there. And wait for him to clear. Alright, we'll put the checklist away. I have these markers that we're going to do maneuvers. Alright. Alright, and now I'll do my pre-takeoff briefing. If I have fire failure before rotation, I will abort the takeoff. If I have fire failure after rotation with runway remaining, abort and land on the remaining runway. If no runway remaining, we will execute emergency procedures. If we have, and at 1,000 feet above the field is 1,630. Alright, Greenwood traffic, Cessna 2200 will be departing runway 27. T6, you gonna stay clear to the left for now?
Yeah, we're gonna back taxi in the grass.
Alright, we'll do, thank you. I'll make sure our landing lights are on.
All y'all have fun now, you hear?
Alright, final's clear, one last check. That's a nice win. And we got brand new painted runway numbers. Alright, we'll bring the power up. We got a little bit of a left crosswind, but we should be able to get out pretty quickly. Alright, power set. Temperatures and pressures are good. They're 60, and we'll go. Whoa! Alright, then we'll climb at 72. And we're flying with 2 fingers and a thumb. All we need on the controls. Alright. We'll fly until we have no runway remaining, which is now no runway remaining. If we had to now, we could probably make 523. But I wouldn't count on it. That being said, we are at almost 300 or 400 feet by the end of the runway. Alright. Turning pretty good, need a little bit more right rudder. Right, we're watching for traffic outside as well as at ADSB, and I'm not correcting quite enough on my upwind leg here. Really would like to have that straight coming off the runway, but I messed up a little bit because we do have a lot of wind today. I think winds aloft at 2,500, at 3,000 feet we were having about 25 knots. Alright. Climb to 1,300, which we got 1,300 soon. Normally we're another quarter mile to half mile ahead there. Alright, there's 1,500, we're gonna look. Turn. And we're gonna have to leave a lot of correction in. Probably still wasn't quite enough. That's decent though. Getting pushed really hard here.
Greenwood traffic, 1 Whiskey Alpha is going to be crossing 27 to the ramp. Greenwood.
Alright, and we're about spaced out right. Now we're going to turn downwind and we're going to lose a lot of airspeed because we have wind coming off our left wing. Alright, there's 1,600. Let the nose come down and accelerate. I definitely feel that. We're going to hit pretty high ground speed on the... So one thing we're trying to consider on downwind here, because we are moving pretty good, with a high ground speed, and we turn into the wind on final, we're going to pick up a lot of airspeed, so I got to remember that. We're almost 110 knots. Alright, and we'll try to keep the power below 2,500, about there, and 1/3 of the way down the runway. Full carb heat, and I'm going to go ahead and call downwind. Greenwood traffic, Cessna 22001 is left downwind runway 27, touch and go Greenwood. Alright, there's a beam the threshold. We will go power back to about 1,700 or so. That's usually a pretty good setting, and then we'll hold our attitude. Go in the wide arc, add in 10 degrees of flaps. And then wait for it to slow down. About 75 here is good. Alright, and then we'll turn base. Usually I try to keep it about that quick. We're trying to be fairly close on our pattern so we can land if we lose power. Alright, we'll call base. Greenwood traffic, Cessna 2001, left base, wind 27, Greenwood. Alright, and now on base we'll add in the rest of our flaps. We're going to go for a total of 20. That's usually about all we need in 150. Alright, we're a little bit fast and high. So I go power to idle. Alright, there's about 70. That's pretty good on the speed. Alright, we'll turn final. Alright, we'll call final. Greenwood traffic, Cessna 22001, short final 1.27 Greenwood. Alright, and we're looking at the top of the numbers, and that's rising up, and we're maintaining our speed.
Traffic, Golden Eagle 41 Lima Juliet, 20 miles to the south, inbound for 35, Jackson County traffic.
Alright, so we're going to try to add a little bit of power in so we don't sink too low here. As we can see, our spot, which will be the top of the numbers, is moving up, and we're maintaining speed. Which is going to be a little bit faster today because it is pretty windy. But we know we can land pretty short. Alright, there's red over white. Going to add a little bit of power in, try to manage our energy here. Actually, we're going to need a lot of power. Hold it, that is a lot of wind. I should have left more power in up top, I guess. A lot of wind. Alright, now we go power to idle. Alright, now we'll bleed off our airspeed here, keeping the rivet line pointed down the runway. That's okay. Alright, flaps coming up. Flaps up, full throttle, on the go. There's 50, rotate. Alright, there's 72. A lot of wind to deal with here. Alright, no runway remaining. Definitely couldn't make it back if we had a power failure here. We would be off into that field over there. I'll make sure to keep up.
Trying to
tack a little bit straighter out here this time.
For a 10-mile final.
A little bit of wind correction angle. And definitely feel the wind. There's a lot of wind up here. Alright, we'll do one more pattern. Maybe two. Alright. 1,100 feet. We'll climb another 200. I click turn at 1,300 because that is 700 feet AGL or 300 feet below pattern altitude, which is what the I believe the ANS used for pattern altitude burning off of upwind. There's 1,300. We looked, and we'll start our crosswind. I'll go ahead and call crosswind. And we're going to leave a lot more wind correction.
Traffic Golden Eagle 41, Liberty List, 10-mile final, 3-5, Jackson County.
That's better. Alright, we're going to space out about that far. Go ahead and turn downwind. I like to use about 30 degrees of bank for this turn, 20 degrees on the two low turns. And it's not as bumpy as I thought it would be out here. And I'm a little bit high because I forgot to watch my altitude. About 1650 is 1,000 feet above 1,000 feet AGL, so usually I aim to be about 1,600 is a good number for here. Alright, we'll go ahead and call downwind. Greenwood traffic, Cessna 22001 is left downwind, runway 27, Greenwood. Alright, we'll pull carb heat before we reduce our power. And we'll beam the threshold, reduce our power to about 1,700. And we're going to leave it in a little bit longer this time because even though it seemed like we were really high, it weren't. Alright, we'll wait till we're in the green line.
Traffic Golden Eagle 5-mile final, 3-5, Jackson County.
Alright, that's at Jackson. We got our 10 degrees of flaps in, we're slow enough. We're going to go ahead and wait a little bit longer till it's about 45 degrees over our left shoulder, the turn base. About there. That's good on the airspeed. Hold about there, we can go a little bit slower than that. We'll go ahead and add another 10 degrees of flaps for a total of 20 on base. And call base. Greenwood traffic, 72201 is left base, runway 27. Greenwood, touch and go. Alright, we'll do one more and then call it. And I did not have near enough crosswind correction angle here and got pushed way out. Alright, we'll go ahead and turn final. Gonna go back almost to idle because we do have a lot of wind, but not quite that much. Alright, we'll be about 65 to 70 here. I'm a smidgen fast from turning into the wind. Alright, we'll see how this works out. Looks like we're high, but we have a lot of headwind. Put in 40 knots. Alright, 65 is about perfect. 65, 70 is about perfect for a normal landing. And we do have just a smidgen bit of crosswind from the right. Dot correction to the left. From about 250. Not hardly enough to matter, but it is a little bit. Alright, and it actually looks like we're still going to be low this time, so we'll add a little bit of power back in. While we're high. And there's some serious wind shear there. You drop a lot right there on final. we're keeping the nose down, add a little bit of power, add a little bit of energy back into the equation. Alright, maybe. Yeah, we'll be good. Beautiful. Alright, flaps coming up, carb heat in. Nose gently touch down. Alright, flaps up, let's go. Alright, there's 50. Rotate. Just kind of hold the nose wheel low, let it come off. Alright, now we'll let it. Alright, we'll try to actually get a square pattern this time. Wind is shifting like crazy, but this is a pretty typical southern afternoon in the summer. And I don't usually use noise canceling below 1,000 feet. So my audio might not be as good as if I had, but I can actually hear the airplane better, so I prefer that. Alright. It is windy. Alright. There's 1,200 feet. Sure have no runway, there's some downsync. Alright, there's 1,300, left wing look, turn. Trying to carry about 5 to 10 knots more than I normally would because there's a lot of wind shear out here. But you want to be climbing at about 75 on upwind and crosswind. Alright, that's a pretty good crosswind there. We got 30 degrees of wind correction angle in. 25 to 30 is about what it takes. Alright, there's about a good spot to call downwind. Roll into downwind, we'll use about 30 degrees of bank here. There's 1,600 feet, we'll lower the nose, start picking up some airspeed. We'll keep the RPM about 2,500 RPM or so. I'm just going to have the trim set in the middle, where I don't really have to touch it, where I have a little bit of pressure on final, a little bit of pressure on up. A little pressure down on downwind, a little bit of pressure up on final, so that I don't really have to mess with the trim, because it's not terribly heavy, 150. Alright. Pull our carb heat about halfway, 2/3 down the runway. And I'll go ahead and make my radio call. Greenwood traffic, Cessna 22001 is left downwind, runway 27, full stop, Greenwood. Alright. Try to stay a little bit higher this time, maybe a little bit faster as well. Reduce our power to about 1,800. Put 10 degrees of flaps in after we're in the wide arc. Alright, we'll keep it inside of here. Turn base. Alright, we'll make our radio call. Let's slow down a little bit like that. Greenwood traffic, Cessna 22001 is left base, runway 27, Greenwood. Alright, turning off, so we'll keep turning a little bit more so that we have a little bit of wind correction angle in. Alright, we got our 20 degrees of flaps in. We'll try to make this one really short. Let's see if we can. Low powered idle. They're pretty high. I'm just gonna keep speed up to punch through that rough layer. And then just float. Add power if I need to. Greenwood traffic says 22001, short final runway 27, full stop Greenwood. Alright, so we're a little bit faster than normal. Try to get through that wind. You can slip, I'm just pushing because we have a lot of headwind. That'll bleed off pretty quickly. The extra speed will. Let's pull it to the end. Alright, we'll carry dark wind correction angle in. Start slowly working our... Alright, we ballooned a little bit. That works. Alright, we'll load it. Put the flaps up. And roll the in. Part of the high-speed taxiway. Alright. Then we'll call clear once we're clear. Greenwood traffic, so the 22001 is clear of runway 27 to Bravo Alpha to the hangars, Greenwood. Alright, we got our strobes off. Sounding like it's an LED. Alright, we'll taxi about. We do have a tailwind taxiing, so we'll keep the controls pushed forward. Alright. One we're taxiing this. We want to stay pretty slow. This might be a little bit fast. Then just keep that yellow line, center line, right on the nose wheel. And our after landing checklist is flaps up, landing light off, torpedo off, and post landing checklist complete. Alright, that was pretty good. A little bit rusty, I need to get out more. Alright, I'll pull a little bit of... Alright, we'll park over here. Alright. Spin it around. Radio's off. There. Fixture. Mags and master. We'll go master mag. It will be master mags. We'll start the master offline.